There is a major shift going on in the diabetes technology world in the US, and it's changing how we access our tech. For years, getting an insulin pump in the US meant going through durable medical equipment, or DME, a convoluted, expensive process that often locked people into 4-year contracts and required paying a lump sum up front. But that model is starting to change. More and more insulin pumps are moving to pharmacy benefits, just like we've seen with CGMs. That means more flexibility for users, easier access, and a shift of risk going from the insurance company to the manufacturer. Today, we're getting into what this looks like and how it will affect you. Welcome to Diabetic Tech. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here, I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and innovation. I've got episodes of this podcast every Monday on YouTube and podcast platforms, and videos coming out on Friday, and on social media at diabe_tech. Omnipod is currently only available through the pharmacy. The upcoming Twist pump will be too, and Beta Bionics is working to roll out its iLet pump in the same way. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Delverne, the mind behind the Healthcare Economy Substack, where he breaks down the complexities of the US healthcare system. He's also the director of payer relations at Beta Bionics, where he is leading the charge to transition the iLet pump to pharmacy benefits. Jeff and I get into what the transition will look like, from the benefits of being able to switch pumps without a year-long contract, to how this new model might push companies to innovate faster in order to retain these patients who are essentially month to month. I also push Jeff on potential challenges like the risk of insurance companies introducing tiered pump coverage, similar to drug formularies. If you haven't heard it, Jeff came on the podcast a few months back to talk about how PBMs are making record profits. They are making like 60% year over year. And we get into like all of the complexities there and how these companies are owned by insurance companies. It is a great episode. Go listen to that. Link is in the show notes. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or any of my channels is not medical advice. It is for educational purposes only. Always consult with a physician before making changes to your healthcare. Jeff, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. It's good to be on after kind of a little bit more of a downer show with health insurance and unit economics after the death of the UHC CEO.
Yeah, PBMs are making 60% profits year over year. Love that, as patients don't really get much more. So yeah, be sure to listen to that episode. But today we are talking all things pharmacy benefits when it comes to insulin pumps. There's a big shift going on in the industry, and I'm excited to kind of hear about your work and what you're doing at Beta Bionics, because you're playing an integral role there, shifting from DME to pharmacy benefits. So first, kind of tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing at Beta Bionics.
Yeah, we're transitioning into the pharmacy channel from the DME or the medical benefit. Similar to kind of how you saw with CGMs over the last 5 or 6 years with Dexcom moving into pharmacy and then Abbott really starting in pharmacy. And it's kind of a change to the paradigm, the revenue model, and just how, type 1 patients that use these pieces of technology will engage with their healthcare. And really, it's a paradigm shift from DME, which is seen as more of like a chronic, ongoing, patient engaged, more touch points needed, versus the pharmacy, which is really more of a dispensing arena or channel. And as these things automate and get smarter and smarter, I guess is a good way to put it, you're going to see them move more and more towards the pharmacy channel.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're specifically doing at Beta Bionics as it relates to getting pumps from DME to the benefits, to the pharmacy.
It's a bit of a payment model shift. Like historically, DME sits in the medical benefit, and so the cost for the patient out of pocket is very high. And I think most people that have gotten a pump through DME kind of see that, they feel that. And the main reason is that initial cost of the hardware up front, and then the patient's portion of that is usually 10-20% of the overall cost of the device. And so it can create a barrier for patients. And one of the things when I came to Beta Bionics was, we wanted to put this in the hands of as many folks as possible so that they have access to it. And the biggest barriers we saw were, ease of use and out-of-pocket expenses. And so we feel like the iLet is the, easiest to use. You enter your weight, then kind of follow your meals, and then this kind of helps us then move to how do we get the out of pocket down. And in the pharmacy, we're going at risk. We're rebating the hardware, and then we're earning it through taking great care of the beneficiary through monthly pharmacy installments to get ourselves whole. So we look at it as more of like a value-based type of arrangement where we say to the health plan, we believe in the iLet to the effect that we're willing to go at risk for that money up front. And we're going to take great care of your beneficiaries, your members, your patients to earn our keep. And so it is a paradigm shift. I think our goal is really to get that out of pocket for the patients as low as possible so that everyone can get on and pump therapy in the iLet.
Yeah, I mean, I just experienced the whole DME thing myself. I was testing out Mobi, so I got this pump to try it out. They have a return policy, 90-day return policy. So I tried this out. I had to pay a little over $900 to get it, right? That's my and not only just that money, but I would then be stuck with this, or I'd be under warranty for 4 years in the DME space, right? I couldn't just try another pump like Beta Bionics or others over DME for 4 years. I could see that being a lot of money for people, especially since insurance already is so much for people. You're paying these premiums, you're paying copays, you're paying prescriptions. Then you're telling me that none of that includes a pump. So this shift to pharmacy benefits, which is something that I've been enjoying for 3 years with my Omnipod, just paying copays monthly, which sure, if you add it all up, maybe over 4 years, it's about the same amount of money, but that initial cost of $1,000 could be too much for many people. So I think that when it comes to accessibility, it seems like pumps could get into the hands of more people with this model. Why does the work you're doing feel important to you?
Great question. I am a rare breed. So I started in the field calling on physicians and families. So I had to sit in front of a lot of those families and have those difficult conversations where they would say, Jeff, I don't know that I can afford $1,200 or $900. And I know my daughter needs this. So how do we make that happen? And a lot of times we didn't, right? Or maybe we would say, maybe we'll try later in the year. And then that patient would end up ultimately never getting on pump therapy because they were motivated at the time, but maybe not later in the year, or whatever it may be, right? So sitting in front of physicians, families, and hearing their story about how, $900 is a significant investment for something that you don't know if you're going to love, how it's going to work. And so I think, being on that end of it really showed me like this is important. I always drove me crazy having to have those conversations. And so when I had heard what they were doing at Beta Bionics, I had worked a lot with these folks in the past, having been at Tandem, and then knowing a lot of these colleagues through Dexcom and through InPen. I kind of knew that this was a rare opportunity to do something good with my career. And so I really jumped on the opportunity to make this move so that we can get the out of pockets a little more affordable for people to try pump therapy.
This episode is sponsored by Omnipod. As someone with T1D and with an incredibly active lifestyle, it's important for me not to get tied up, especially with tubes on my insulin pump. I love to go swimming, lift weights, and play kickball with friends. And with Omnipod 5, I never have to worry about tubes getting in the way. Plus, not having to disconnect helps me to stay in range during all of my favorite physical activities. That includes sexy time too. See if you're eligible for a 30-day trial by visiting omnipod.com/diabetic. On there, you'll see full safety and risk information and trial terms. That's omnipod.com/diabetic. Explain to us a little better what the landscape has been so far, whether that's, maybe the transition that CGM's already kind of went through. What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, I think that was a slow process, and I think you're seeing it play out, here as well, because driving change in the healthcare industry can be, it takes time because it is a paradigm shift. So, um, you know, from the changes, right? I'd say the biggest like change that Dexcom probably saw is they got some PBM contracts, and then they had to go to downstream health plans to talk through why it made sense to move it from medical benefit to pharmacy benefit. And those are two totally different benefit designs. And I told you a little bit, when you think about medical benefit, it's usually not cash on delivery. They're not designed for you to pay upon getting the services. So if you think about, most of those medical benefit claims, it's a hospital claim or a physician claim where you go see your doctor and then you pay the bill later, right? So you're not having to pay the bill before they'll see you, versus the pharmacy benefit was really designed for low copays because it's cash on delivery. You're not getting the medicine unless you pay the bill. And so the benefit design, if you look at the national like healthcare expenditures that Medicare releases every year, what is the average out of pocket for DME? It's going to be 47 to 40% of the patient is paying that portion of it, right? Versus pharmacy is going to be 10 to 13% out of pocket, right? And the reason is because it's designed for you to have to pay the cash around as soon as you get the services. So the design of the benefit is lower copays because you are having to pay it. Like, for instance, you don't walk in and say, hey, I need my spleen needs attention, I need to do a surgery, and they say, well, we're not going to work on you until you pay us cash today. And then in the pharmacy, that is kind of what happens, right? They say, Justin, it's $400 copay, and if you say, well, I can't pay it all today, they say you can't pick up the meds. So it's a little bit of a different benefit design. One's designed for medical, more medical claims. One's for pharmacy, prescription drugs, and lower copays. And so the move for CGMs and pumps really makes a lot of sense to be able to get that out of pocket down.
How does it work on like an insurance company side? Specifically, like with DME, how were insurance companies paying for that differently than for pharmacy benefits?
Yeah, so in the DME space, typically what happens is there's what's called HCPCS codes, and those are medical billing codes. And traditional insulin pumps would fall under an E code, E0784, and then the monthly supplies would be, A4230, A4231, A4332, yeah, A4232, which is, those are like the infusion sets and cartridges, basically. And you would bill those monthly, to the insurance company or the pump once every 4 years. So the paradigm shift was you would get, say $4,000 or $5,000 up front for the pump, and then we'll say $100 to $150 a month thereafter for supplies. This is basically saying to the insurance company, you're holding all the risk in that original $4,000 to $5,000 payment. We will actually forego that, get it to your patient, and then we'll earn it back through monthly installments for the supplies through taking great care of it. So if we lose, if the patient hates insulin, pump the therapy in month 1, 2, 3. But if we win if they are long-term adopters of the technology.
Yeah, and you explained to me last time we spoke that reason exactly right there could affect innovation in the space, right? Tell me about why that is.
Yeah, I think you're going to see competition really in that space. The PBM space is, there's three that control 80% of the market. There's four that control 90% of the market. So there's a lot of compression for us to bid against each other for better pricing. Because there's not a warranty in place yet, you could get people switching from one brand to the next. And so it's going to force everyone to constantly drive more and more innovation to the customer in order to earn their business and earn that reimbursement. So kind of back to my take great care of the beneficiary in order to continue to get their business.
Now, there are some companies that still remain on DME and haven't, to my knowledge, made an effort to move toward pharmacy benefits. Why? What is the incentive for companies to remain on DME?
I think there's in pharmacy, as I said, because there's such hierarchy, control, consolidation that there is going to be price compression. And so I think initially prices will be good for the manufacturers, but pinning us against one another and making us negotiate for formulary positioning, I think is scary to some, right? So think about DME channel, right? Those codes, that E code and those A codes, they've relatively been the same for 25 years. So there's not a lot of price compression. By the same token, there's not a lot of price, inflation. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I think you're seeing some of the manufacturers uh, maybe taking a wait and see approach. Maybe at some point they will come in. To date, I think you're seeing more and more embrace kind of the pharmacy model of pay as you go.
Yeah, that news just came out recently of Medtronic's new CGM, Simplera Sync, getting cleared and coming out to 780G users in the US this fall. But in the fine print, it says that only new users can get access to it. They need to get a new pump, which means a new 4-year warranty. In order to get the new CGM, that is a huge leap over the last one. All other users, if you're 1 year in, you still have 3 years left with the pump you're on before you can start this huge advancement. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Really?
Like all the companies I've worked for are, was Tandem was, started for, a reason. And a lot of the folks there, think highly of patient choice and being able to keep patients, happy in what they want to do. Because the old saying is, the device that they'll do the best on is the one the patient chooses. And I think at Beta Bionics, we believe that as well. So for me, I'm never like a huge fan of like a lock in on one piece of technology or being, married to one piece. And I think that was the innovation behind, if you're thinking about it, the T Slim was software updatable, right? And then you're seeing us as the first tube insulin pump to ever make it in pharmacy to give optionality and low copay. So for me, that's not like something that I love, but at the end of the day, each company is going to have kind of their sacred cows, and I would say ours is more drive innovation, uh, try to wrap ourselves around the customer, and try to continue to innovate towards what they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, the T Slim just came out with a new, like an algorithm update, like a huge update, just, over the air. And the fact that with a Medtronic pump that users would have to, sign a new 4-year contract or have to wait, anywhere from 1 to 3 years in order to do that just sounds um, really tough as innovation continues. Um, with this model of pharmacy benefits, let's say Medtronic was pharmacy benefits, and this is hypothetical, but do you think that things like this wouldn't happen as often, that patients with this model could get upgrades sooner because they're essentially month to month?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're gonna like when you zoom out, right? Like the pharmacy benefit managers in America have a lot of leverage and a lot of power, right? Given the companies that they're involved with, whether it be Cigna, whether it be CVS, whether it be United Health Group, they're all market caps of several $100 billion. So they have a lot of leverage, right? And so they're going to force the manufacturers to do what they want, right? Like I think it would take a huge innovation in the space to be able to get enough leverage on a PBM to say, here's the rules, we'll come into the PBM. I just typically that's not something I've seen, right? Even in the GLP-1 space, that's really hot, and I don't even see them having that kind of leverage to say, Mr. PBM, if you do this, you're going to have to do that. They still kind of need to get access to the PBM's beneficiaries. So I don't know that a pump manufacturer, given like how size, what, because we're pretty small compared to GLP-1 spend. I don't know that they'll bend or break for one of us, to be honest with you.
How does this shift, if at all, relate to the systems outside of the US? If someone in Europe is, deciding between, say, like a pump on how's that work between like Omnipod or say Medtronic? Do they have similar options as we do, just in like a way that their government pays for it?
Yeah, they usually kind of more mirror like our traditional like DME model. So they don't have access to this type of, system where, we'd have like a pharmacy benefit or a move into pharmacy, at least at this time that I'm aware of. Most of them do not. And I don't know, given where they're at in their healthcare life cycle, if that's anything in the near future. But for domestic, that's, I think, where things are headed. You're going to see more and more of these things move into that space.
And I believe Omnipod, at least in the pump space, was kind of the first to really move in this direction. How did that go, or how has that gone since they started?
Yeah, yeah. I think initially everybody was like, "Oh, this is not going to work well," but it has worked really well for them. Essentially, they have just moved to more of a subscription model where they're getting X amount per 5 pod packs, and it's worked out really well for them. Frankly, their gross margins are very strong. They've had some of the best quarters of their in their company's history over the last 8-10 quarters. So for them, it's worked amazing, and frankly, in the zoom out, as someone who's been in the space for a decade, I think it's now going to be really, really good for patients as we move from kind of this high copay into this lower out of pocket to get access. I think that's really the biggest thing is $25 out of pocket for someone to try pump therapy. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Omnipod doing this. Twist is coming out soon that will be through pharmacy benefits. Beta Bionics is actively transitioning or opening those doors up and has had success. Is there a lot of pressure on these other companies that haven't quite made that switch to do this switch? I mean, Tandem has their 90-day return policy, which is something. I mean, try it for 90 days essentially for free, which is actually pretty good. But then you're stuck to that 4 years, right? Like I am returning my Mobi. So I did essentially get to use this for free for 3 months, which yay me. But outside of that, like, are these companies feeling like, okay, well, maybe instead of that 90-day return policy, we actually do pharmacy benefits?
Yeah, I think I'm not. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I would say at some point, traditional utilization management, like in a health insurance company, they want to uh, you know, bring all the class in one channel and try to drive down price. And so I would imagine at some point you see everybody kind of pushed into the pharmacy channel down the road. Where it sits today, right? Like, Omnipod is say it's 100% through pharmacy and they've got 75% coverage, right, of the covered lives in the US. If you look, with us, we've been the most successful tube pump. I think we started, the year mid single digits, and we're guiding to, mid 20 or, above 20% here for this year. We're having quite a bit of success. And then Twist is early, right? They're maybe a week or two here on the market. How much success are they going to have, driving it into the pharmacy? I think will be seen. But Tandem Mobi is now on some formularies. I know they're trying to move into the pharmacy as well. So it's not
Oh,
on.
okay.
It is on everybody's radar. That is a move, and I think to my earlier point, I think we're going to be voluntold in some respects.
So insurance companies are essentially paying less immediately and just over time, right? That's like the scheme on what they're seeing on their end.
So in the current model, they're bearing most of the risk, right? Because they're paying for that. Say it's a $5,000 claim, and the patient has to come up with $1,000. They pay their employer, right? Pay the $4,000. Well, if the patient doesn't love it and uses it for 2 or 3 months and then doesn't return it, right? Like they've now bared that risk. Versus in the new model, we're saying we will go at risk and rebate the hardware and then earn it through monthly supply orders through the pharmacy.
Okay, so that makes sense. So you're saying someone gets a tube pump, they try it, they don't love it. So then they put that on pause, they put it in their closet, and then they start getting a pump over pharmacy benefits. And they're using that. So essentially, the insurance company has not only paid for that tube pump, but now they continue to pay for these pumps that are coming through pharmacy, which is totally a thing right now. That's what I've done. Now, instead, it would be a company like Beta Bionics that says, no, we'll lay out the money, that give this device to that person, and then if they decided to put it in their closet, whatever, well, not whatever, but you're essentially out that money. Would there or why wouldn't there be a system in place where Beta Bionics says, all right, if you didn't like it, you can just give us back the pump. No charges here, but like, I mean, couldn't you use it? Like, why wouldn't you want it back? Oh, I guess that there's incentive if they still have it to go back on it.
Yeah, I think in pharmacy there's no returns, right? So it's again that
No,
COD.
there
Yeah,
aren't.
so it's kind of a catch 22 as it sits today, that we wouldn't get it right back, but maybe there's a situation where it would. It's really the core thing of it is like, does the manufacturer believe in the product? Do they think you're going to fall in love with it? And if you do,
Yeah.
you'll go at risk. And if you don't, maybe it's not a product issue. Maybe it's a cost of goods
Yeah.
issue. So for us, we kind of look at it and say, I mean, a lot of the folks end up loving it. So we're going to earn our money back. And to date, that's what has bored out. So for us, we feel like it's good value. We think there'll be more and more that emulate, the model.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the pump itself isn't necessarily worth like $8,000. The money that you're paying is going toward the R&D, right? Or like all of the money that's gone into making this device. But like you can't tell me that these mechanics are worth, $9,000.
I don't know what everyone's cogs are, right? Like, and I don't know that I would want to like disclose it. But at the end of the day, I think you want to be really thoughtful. Every manufacturer does, around how we build these things. Make sure we can get the best technology into them at a cost efficient way, so that we can get more and more people, um, with great time and range. That's really like kind of the credo of being here at Beta Bionics. So
Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. I do want to get into how patients will see this on their end, because I do see the benefits here, but I also see potential downfalls. First of all, the benefit is accessibility, right? We kind of covered that a bit, but this will be a much more accessible system in the sense that someone doesn't have to lay out $5,000+, whatever it is, or $900 in my case immediately, but they could just, pay $25 a month and then put a pause on it. If they want to go to MDI for a second, go back to pumps, whatever. Are there other areas that this is opening up accessibility wise other than kind of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with obviously with type 2s, that's always been what you hear about with when you listen to an Omnipod earnings call, is they're really dead set on attacking that market because of the size. So I think if you're asking a primary care to work with a DME for an order, it can be challenging. That's just not, a primary care physician's not really equipped. They don't have the staff, the paperwork faxing.
Gotcha.
And when you think about how quickly claims are adjudicated through pharmacy, it's usually an EHR script, and then it comes and it's pretty much within a few days you're going to get the product versus the DME, which is going to be a 1 to 5, 6 week ordeal.
Yeah, and then I'm sure if you think about it, many type 1s feel that the pump is so necessary for their everyday life, but I can imagine that there are a lot of people with type 2 that don't feel that way necessarily. So their ability to say, oh, sure, I'll pay a copay of $25, $50 to try something out, they're much more willing to do that than, oh, yeah, sure, I'll throw out $900 for something I'm not really sure I want to use. And yes, there's a return policy, but the idea of laying out that money immediately is not the most exciting thing for people.
No, and when you zoom out and look at like the diabetes like wallet, right? So in the US, the average person costs about $15,000 a year for care. Someone with type 1 is going to be in that $25,000 range, right? And so then think about like your super users. So people that are highly engaged, use a CGM, use a pump, are all in on taking care of themselves. It can be $40,000 or $55,000 a year, right? And how much spendable income do they have? So if you think about $40,000 a year you're spending taking care of yourself, and your responsibility of that is $7,200, you're out of pocket. It's roughly 18% of that. That's pretty expensive. That's an extra, $600 a month on care. And I'm sure you feel that, right? Like it's, insulin, CGM, supplies, and then that doesn't include your appointments, right? So how much more money is there in your wallet to extract? And I think we think a lot about that at Beta Bionics, is how do we bring these technologies to market in a way that we can get them to the people without kind of adding to that burden. So it's a very weird space when you think about $900, $1,200, $1,800 out of pocket. That does not help the case to kind of make sure those folks have more spendable income.
With this new model, does it affect people, let's say in the US, who don't have insurance? Does it affect their kind of out of pocket any differently? Does it make it any easier for someone who maybe they just kind of lost their health insurance and they go 3 months without it, but still want to get 3 months supplies? How would this look for them, or would it look any differently?
Yeah, I mean, because they wouldn't have health insurance, they're not going to have like PBM coverage, but they still may be able, and I don't know for sure, but they would have to check to see, is there like a PBM card that they can get access to that would, allow them, whether it be like a GoodRx card, to get access to um, kind of the PBM rates. I think the cash pays are still going to be, pretty high, but it would probably be the best way to go because there are no generics of all these products.
Gotcha. And you mentioned earlier, you said tiered, and when you said it, I cringed because I experience tiers in my own health insurance where I have a preferred insulin that my insurance company told me I needed to switch to. It doesn't work for me. It actually causes burning, and then the other one they offered doesn't work either. Right. So I got a prior auth for a different insulin, and they approved it. But when I got the bill for the new insulin, instead of the normal $55 for 3 months, it went to $255 for 3 months. I I guess I'm ignorant. I didn't realize that that could even happen. That something I am approved for by my doctor saying that your insulins don't work for me, this one does, that they can charge me so much more money for that insulin. Could we see that with insulin pumps? If all the insulin pumps go, pharmacy benefits, are we going to see, oh, that's the one you want? Actually, that's going to cost you 3 times more. Like that almost sounds worse.
Yeah, I think you could see that down the road. I know that all the manufacturers are really pushing against that, to try to keep it, similar parity. Today, it's looking more, like tier two versus tier three, which is not significant. It might be a $20 out of pocket a month, copay differential, maybe 30, right? But I think the hope would be to try to keep that. I think the fear is exactly what you said, where you have kind of one company really goes after it for a preferred, and then you got to try one pump to get to the next. I think that's something we all certainly want to avoid, just because most of the manufacturers that I meet with, I talk to, really want pump choice. Back to the original, which patient, what do they do best on? It's the one that they choose. So I don't, as it sits today, I would say, hopefully that's not the case, but in historical utilization management within the pharmacy channel, that is kind of typically, I would say, the downsides of this move.
Yeah, I mean, choosing an insurance already feels like one of the most difficult tasks because there's this list of questions you need to ask. Oftentimes you don't even realize the questions you have to ask. And I feel like so many of these companies run in a way that's, oh, well, you can find that answer out once you have the insurance. Which is like, no, I want to know how much everything's going to cost. So to me, it sounds like there could be a new question in the future of, oh, and what pumps do you cover and what tiers are they? Which honestly hurts a little bit because this whole insurance, this whole insulin thing kind of hurt. I was like, whoa, I'm paying an extra $200 every 3 months now for this insurance for my insulin. I'd hate to see, the pumps kind of going that way. And I'd hope that pump companies aren't having like backdoor conversations with insurance companies creating deals. Like, is that what's happening? Is that how, how do tiers even happen? Why do certain insurance companies have a tier one and tier three? Are they having like conversations with these companies like, oh, we'll support you tier one, make it the cheapest option, but like in some sort of backdoor conversation?
It's not really even backdoor. It's like you put in your bids, and then
Okay.
I
It's an
think there's
auction now.
yeah,
Our
yeah,
health is an auction. I'm happy about that.
yeah. So everybody, each manufacturer is going to put it in their bid, and then have some discussions around like where you want to be or where you could potentially be. I think you'll see most of the manufacturers say, we don't really want to be like a draconian. I think most people remember I was at Tandem when Medtronic did that exclusive deal with United Healthcare, and that was an outrage because you had 44 million UHC customers that could now only get Medtronic insulin pump, and that went on for several years before that was removed. And
What
um,
happened?
well, Tandem eventually got coverage. I think it was a few years later, but it was just it was not good for anyone. There was a lot of outrage in the community of people that used UHC or employer groups, and so I would hope that after that experiment, I think that was 2016. I'm an optimist by nature,
Yeah.
so I'm going to choose to say we're going to continue to have some sort of choice that's still affordable.
Someone told me, and I'd have to double check this, that United Healthcare was like dropping coverage for Omnipod Dash and focusing only on Omnipod 5. A lot of people are still using Dash with their, DIY systems. Some people are just on Dash and want to stay on it. Um, do you think they've learned their lesson? Like, what happened there, you think?
Well, I think from the last time to this time, the demand for Dash may not be as large as at that time when the UHC did that with Medtronic. I think Medtronic maybe had 40% of the market. So in this case, I don't know that Dash is getting that much utilization. And so somebody in the modeling department, probably at Optum, if this is true, probably looked at it and said, if we put those dashes into Omnipod 5, we can get more units and then get more utilization and then maybe get better pricing per unit, right? So uh, that's kind of how they think in modeling terms, to be able to get
Yeah.
a cheaper rate for the member, for the downstream customer.
Yeah. As a patient, that frustrates me to hear, right? Because it's just profits over care. Like, the patients that are using Dash are using it for a reason. Many of them may be using it for DIY systems that give them the best outcomes. So for a decision like that to be made without consulting your patients is a gut punch. And I hope that isn't true that they're doing that, but I mean, it's what I heard or what could be happening. So
To be completely transparent with you, all of the people that you meet at a PBM are very clinical. They're pharmacists, and so like they would have to feel really strongly to do it. Meaning, like they must have looked at some clinical data to say, all right, like clinically, this is going to make more sense. And so they kind of balance. Like I heard a clinician from one of the big PBMs speak, and she was like, "We look at everything clinically first, and then we start making evaluations on unit economics thereafter." And so
yeah,
it had to have been a situation where they weren't getting much in terms of like utilization, and then, but I get it, like their ability to know the nuances of the DIY and where people might be married to that technology, I think is probably a different case, right? So, no, they would probably argue like they were driving down price, right? And that gives you a lower copay or gives your employer a better price, whatever it may be,
I
right?
don't care
So,
what the price my employer is paying. I care the copay is staying the same. All the prices are in the background. It's just I see the front facing copay. Of course, that affects premiums, so maybe I do care. It all comes back. Are there any benefits to this whole shift to pharmacy benefits that we didn't quite cover? That because we got kind of depressing a little bit. Are there any other benefits that we didn't cover?
yeah, I think just briefly covering, you touched on is, the technology piece of it's going to force everyone to be better. And I think that's better for patients, lower copays. Again, that spendable wallet for people living with T1D is important, and then being able to continue to drive, innovation. So I'm really optimistic about it. It's really the reason I'm here, is to kind of, I would say, put a bow on really the diabetes career for me. I had to sit in front of families and physicians, and then I sat in front of health plans, and then now I'm really on the PBM end, trying to drive this through. And a lot of us, our CEO Sean Saint is a type 1, and for him, I think he looks at this as a calling as well. So it's like, is it easy to use? How much easier can we get it to use? And then is it affordable? So being here at this time, I think it's exciting times for diabetes tech.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for it. I mean, there are so many benefits to it, and I think the innovation part of it and making all of the pumps so easily accessible in a way that all the pump companies feel like, oh, we got to work faster to make ourselves more desirable. We even had an episode with Beta Bionics about all the innovations that have been coming and moving quickly, because you are doing a lot over there, and I'd love to see that speed of innovation happen as quickly at other companies. So the idea of more fire under each of you, and to encourage you to be better. I'd love to see that. For any patients or providers that are listening, what should they do as like the landscape changes? How can they know what is available to them via pharmacy benefits?
Yeah, I would reach out to their manufacturer, or if they're interested in a manufacturer and want to try something else, I would reach out to them, have them run your pharmacy benefits. As it sits today, right, like you can kind of move around. You may see, where it turns into like a year commitment. That's not really going to be anything from us. It's probably just more as the channel matures. But as it sits today, I would reach out to your manufacturer and say, will you run my pharmacy benefits? I'd like to try the iLet, or I'd like to try this device.
Thanks, Jeff. This was an awesome conversation. I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic. I see a lot of good here, and I'm excited to kind of. I'm excited for myself to have more options, to be able to switch around and make more fun videos. So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and always reach out with any questions. I love what you're doing. I obviously
Thanks.
now I'm a loyal follower, and so is my family, so my son, and
Oh,
then no, we enjoy it. Thank you for doing the work.
I love it. Of course. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what your thoughts are on this shift in the comments. What has your experience been with DME and pharmacy benefits? I want to hear your pros and cons. Maybe that even becomes like this bigger video where I share your comments. New episodes of this release every Monday on podcast platforms and on YouTube and video. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.